This right here is William Spaniel on YouTube. He did a video a couple months ago about why the United States might invade Venezuela. Okay, go to his YouTube page, subscribe to his channel, like this video. While you're there, subscribe to my channel at YouTube/Sestill_G2D because I am the second coming of the best thing you've seen on the internet. Yeah, so let's discuss this. Let's talk about this. Let's watch this video, and we're gonna keep talking. Let's go. Woo!
With the United States now having killed 11 Venezuelans, albeit alleged members of a cartel.
It's like 80 right now, by the way.
One wonders if we might soon be adding
I don't know. Trump said stop doing it. You keep doing it. It's on you at this point.
Another state to the board. And, of course, that will have spillover effects to the conflict on the minds of everyone.
Yeah, no, we don't really care about Russia and Ukraine anymore. Notice how people stopped caring about that the moment Gaza started getting bombed, right? And now, people don't care so much about that anymore either because there's a new thing with Trump and Venezuela. With the United States and with Venezuela. I don't know why these farmers in green robes think they can do something, but hey, fucking whatever. Anyway, yeah, no, so there's conflicts all over the globe, and the only ones that people care about are the fresh ones, the ones that get people riled up in a certain political way, right?
This is the USS Lake Erie. Is she named for the most beautiful lake in the world?
Okay, alright, listen. The Great Lakes in the United States, on the North American continent, first of all, they're like the largest source of fresh water in the world, or at least one of them anyway. They're super important. They're large enough to literally create their own climate in that region of the planet, which is also awesome. If you've ever actually been to one, you'll know that they don't look anything like what a conventional lake would look like because they're so massive that they literally look like oceans while you're there. And in the case of, I think, Lake Erie, which is what he's going to talk about, it's really not that far across. If you go up in, a plane or something over Lake Erie, you can see, on one side there's Canada, and on the other side there's the United States. It's actually pretty cool at night.
Perhaps. But I can tell you with more confidence that she is one of at least 9 military vessels currently deployed toward Venezuela. Their mission? Good question. Officially, the group is deployed to the region to address drug exports. But the size and the shape of the U.S. forces in the region indicate
they are going to address drug exports. They're going to address it at the source, okay? Done taking out the dealers. We're going for the suppliers.
Otherwise, even as the first shots of whatever type of conflict that we are witnessing have targeted cartel operations.
Are we going to watch this
today,
happen?
We will discuss what exactly is parked outside of Venezuela, some alternative theories about the operation, including preventing potential expansion of Russia.
Okay, so Trump said, stop sending drugs. Venezuelan cartels said, we're going to do whatever we want. Trump started stopping them from doing whatever they want. And so now he's deploying more forces there to continue to stop them from doing whatever they... this seems like a win to me. What's going on?
Influence, halting the production of Venezuelan drones, which might give us some flashbacks to another recent U.S. operation, the situation with Guyana and its oil industry, and to assist with a potential domestic rebellion, which I think is the most important to cover, though it might be all of the above that is driving the U.S. decision.
I mean, yeah, if there's a rebellion in country that wants to stand up against the current narco-tyranny state, then why wouldn't America support that freedom, rebellion? What's happening?
Then we will...
Why do people not like what Trump is doing here? This doesn't make any sense.
We'll conclude with how serious movement in Venezuela might affect the broader conflict map. But let's start things off with what the United States is actually doing, which apparently is to come here. The question itself is interesting, because mainstream news outlets have hardly covered this story. Indeed, Venezuela flew under the radar until Trump announced the move of U.S. Space Command to Alabama, and then offhand volunteered that the United States had fired the first shots of the operation. That created some buzz, which then exploded when Trump released this video.
He said don't do it. They did it. There has to be consequences, and there were.
On Truth Social. To be fair to the mainstream press, Washington was not exactly shouting out the mission from the rooftops before the kinetic action began. The most that you might have heard about it was a question or two during a White House press briefing. I suppose that is a testament to how much else is going on in the world right now, and the limited bandwidth that the media has to cover such situations. But the lack of coverage from the media was a gamble. Washington had ordered a non-trivial deployment, and it will look bad in retrospect if this goes beyond a one-off ship destruction. We will see what happens.
It's not going to look all that bad in retro. Look, having the retrospective from your point of view here, sir, Mr. William, sir, since you posted this video a couple of months ago, right, you didn't have access to the information that I have now. People don't necessarily look at it negatively, but there is a very small group that is very loud that does look at it negatively. The problem is they don't actually have any kind of articulatable argument that would make any sort of fucking sense as to why it's wrong. They just say that it is because they hate Trump, and so whatever he is for, they must be against. That's why I'm really, really, really hoping that this whole Epstein thing with him and Bill Clinton, I really want it to be true. I do. Because they're going to, look, the moment that if they find out that it is in fact true, and let's say they prove that, the left is going to have to hate the gays. And I can't wait for that to happen. It's going to be great. And look, man, this is going to be a glorious time.
Now that the chips are down.
Look, all I'm saying is, there's only one side of the political aisle that allows any kind of freedom of thought, right? I'm just saying.
Down. Anyway, the United States has moved at least 9 vessels into the region. 1 cruiser, 3 destroyers, 1 fast attack submarine, 3 vessels from a marine.
Guy, what? A sub? Well, I guess the cartels have submarines. It does make sense, I suppose.
Marine Air-Ground Task Force, and 1 littoral combat ship. By the way, I spared no expense going through the DoD photo archives to ensure that we had correct images of all of the vessels. The aforementioned Lake Erie, the Samson, the Gravely, the Jason Dunham, the Newport News, the Iwo Jima, which we'll talk about again.
Hold on. The fucking submarine's name is the Newport News.
And in a second, the San Antonio, the Fort Lauderdale, and the Minneapolis St. Paul. Then there may also be 1 or more military Sea Lift Command vessels, as well as 1 or more U.S. Coast Guard cutters. They do not exactly tell us everything. Regardless, remember that the stated purpose of this mission is to intercept drug shipments. Well, looking back at the deployment package, could these vessels do that?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
yes.
They sure can.
But let me tell you...
Listen, the United States are masters of proportional response. Okay? So if you're going to send us fishing boats, we're going to send you something that is relatively proportional, right? These are just big fishing boats. There's lots of fishermen on these ones. That's all. That's all it is, okay?
You about the Iwo Jima for a moment. I took a trip to Norfolk, Virginia recently. This was the view from my hotel room. When I stepped out on the balcony, I thought for a second that I was looking at an aircraft carrier. Ultimately, It was not.
Aircraft carriers are fucking massive. This, I think, might just be a couple destroyers.
This is the Bataan, which is the same class as the Iwo Jima. Point is, it is only 250 feet shorter than a real carrier. And even knowing the difference, looking at some photos from the top of the Iwo Jima, it is still easy to convince yourself that it is a traditional carrier. That seems like a bit of overkill when you are trying to catch the likes of these guys. Now,
hell, maybe I don't know shit about boats. And to be fair, I don't, but I know that fucking carriers are massive.
To be clear, they have started intercepting drug vessels, as we saw from the earlier video. But if that is all they are doing, the point still stands about it being overkill.
You know, the Coast Guard would probably be really, really good at this specific type of operation, right? Because like this is basically what they do on a daily basis. A lot of people give the Coast Guard like shit, but they are some of the most heavily armored. They are some of the most fucking fortified, like heavily armored military units that the United States has to offer. They have all the cool shit. Like they are every bit a Navy strike team just here on the home base.
Instead, these 5 vessels would seem to have a primary role of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles, this thing here, which carry 1,000-pound warheads and can fly the entire length of Venezuela. Now, could you use a Tomahawk to strike drug cartels in Venezuela? I suppose, but goodness, that is a lot of firepower. And I am not sure that Venezuela...
Yeah, so? So what?
President Nicolas Maduro would appreciate the nuance of who is in the crosshairs. Meantime, these are marine vessels. Consequently, their best use is for expeditionary missions, landing Marines on Venezuelan territory to do something? Now, could you use them to arrest or kill drug cartel leadership? I suppose.
And they would be super good at it. I'm just saying.
But goodness, that is still putting boots on the ground. And I am still not sure that Venezuelan president...
It's like taking like a tax accountant, like with a master's degree, right? Like taking them to the casino and sitting them down at the blackjack table because they're super good with numbers and can count cards, right? They would be super good at it. Let them do it. They have these skills. I'm just saying.
President Nicolas Maduro would appreciate the nuance of who is in the crosshairs.
Oh, Maduro.
It may be further worth noting that this is the first vessel eliminated, and while a Tomahawk did not destroy it, some kind of missile did. So maybe having all of this force there is Trump trying to convince the cartels that he is not playing around.
Might just have been a javelin.
A couple of notes about this. 1. Even if the cartels are the main target, it is easy for this to turn into a war against an opposing state. That is, in part, how the United States ended up in Afghanistan for 2 decades, fighting a state because a non-state opponent is wrapped up in a state. And, actually, the line is blurred there. Put a pin in that for a minute.
Oh shit, they have a reward
Second,
on that.
this ought to be the final nail in the coffin in regard to what the meaning of America First is. A recurring point on this channel is that...
Check the hat, Gulf of America. Hell yeah!
The phrase means 2 different things to 2 different...
Look, the United States and Canada collectively is referred to as North America. Mexico is referred to as Central America. And, Brazil, Venezuela, Peru, like that region, that whole kind of continent down there is referred to as South America. There's no reason this can't be the Gulf of America. And it would still fit with, like, with cultural norms. Like, for real. I don't understand this.
Different groups. One sees it as...
Mexico's just pissy because that's the only thing they had.
...as American isolationism. The other sees it as the United States doing what it wants on the international stage, ignoring complaints that it is over-exercising its military power. Essentially, this is a throwback to the George W. Bush administration, but turned up to 11. Well, we have seen an extended bombing campaign against the Houthis in Yemen, a quick but major B-2 bombing run against Iran, and now this, among other things. I think that...
That's one thing I like about the Trump administration. So they are by far the most transparent administration that the United States has had, at least in my lifetime. Which admittedly is only like 4 presidents or so. But they're the most transparent administration that I've seen in my lifetime. And as transparent as they are, they still have the ability to keep things, like certain things, secret whenever there are ongoing operations where letting out that information would compromise the security of the military personnel that are performing those operations. So I really do appreciate that and respect it, because they are so about letting the American people know everything that they possibly can. But then they also know that there are certain things that are best to keep secret for now, right? They eventually will tell you, but only after it has been completed in a successful manner.
Ought to tell you everything that you need to know about how Trump views America First policy.
Woo!
And
America!
look, it may end up being the case that the large deployment
Look, I said it in the beginning. American imperialism, baby. Yeah!
is just a shock and awe exercise to convince any potential cartel affiliate to think twice about their occupation. And the bigger the force that you bring, the more splash that it has on communicating the message. Still, all of the extra firepower leaves open the question of what else might the United States be up to here.
Complete military takeover of Venezuela, please. For me, please, fingers crossed, complete takeover of Venezuela, please.
One answer points eastward to Russia, and I think that this needs some context of what it is not. About a month ago, a semi-official Iranian governmental news agency reported that Russia was going to deploy Oreshniks to Venezuela. You may remember these as the nuclear-capable hypersonic missiles that Russia fired on Ukraine once in November 2024, which Putin warned in this video.
Also remember, if you become part of the United States, you get to be under the glorious Golden Dome. Be protected from stuff like this, that's all I'm saying.
Signaled was the beginning of a new level of crisis escalation. Then everyone realized that these were just expensive missiles that travel really fast, but otherwise are not particularly concerning. And then the whole thing rightfully faded into memory. Cue some sarcastic clapping. Of course, that did not stop op-eds about how this is a new Cuban Missile Crisis, claiming that the United States must intervene now or face the consequences. In truth, though, the Cuban Missile Crisis created a new danger for the United States.
Hold on, hang on, I'm going to back that up real quick, because that said something I think might be important. Donald Trump can stop the next Cuban Missile Crisis? Interesting. If Trump destroys the Maduro regime now, the Russians will not be able to place hypersonic weapons in America's hemisphere later. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, all right. You know what? That makes sense. Look, take over Venezuela for American security. Also to help the Venezuelan people get a better lifestyle, but also for American security.
In truth, though, the Cuban Missile Crisis created a new danger for the United States, because the Soviet Union was stationing nuclear weapons in Cuba that could strike the United States' mainland. Today, however, everything inside of the United States is already in range of Russia's intercontinental ballistic missiles. So, no need to worry that placing Oreshniks in Venezuela alters the balance of power in any meaningful way. Nevertheless, Venezuela would like to work closer with Russia. Thus, what we might be witnessing here is a 21st century application of the Monroe Doctrine. The United States is placing assets in the region to deter Russia from trying to increase ties to a country on this side of the Atlantic. Bear in mind that this comes at a time when leaders from China, Russia...
The Monroe Doctrine has to do with American expansion and imperialism. I covered that in a previous video. I'm just so you're aware. It's a kind of an extension of Manifest Destiny, right? Exactly what I'm talking about. American global expansionism, American imperialism, all the world is a game of risk, and America needs to win. Definitely subscribe if you agree.
Korea, Iran, and others are all meeting in Beijing, which is placing greater stress on the Western coalition. Sticking with the theme of preventing arms production, let's talk about drones. And this further convolutes our trial by fire. There are rumors of cooperation between Iran and Venezuela on drone production. Venezuela has already produced the Zamora V1, which is a riff on the Shahed 131. It only has a range of 19 miles, though, so perhaps watch out USS Lake Erie, but also Lake Erie has nothing to worry about. That said, a properly made Shahed drone, up to specs like...
Is he going to keep making that joke?
what Russia uses in Ukraine, has a range of 1,600 miles. Lo and behold, such distance takes you all the way to Tallahassee, Florida. And while I am sure that the folks in Tuscaloosa, Alabama might not be too dismayed by that news, It represents a serious change to the threat that Venezuela poses to the United States. As such, one possibility is that the United States is positioning a strike force to either go after some ongoing Venezuelan production site or to deter Venezuela from starting one. This draws a parallel to the U.S. strikes on
Fuck it, plot twist. Venezuela 51st state. Let's do it.
Iranian nuclear facilities back in June. The B-2 bombing runs received all of the media attention, but they were only a part of the operation. Another part was a healthy dose of Tomahawk missiles, which,
yeah, it was.
Are aplenty aboard the naval contingent deployed to the region. Maybe they are there for the job themselves, or maybe they await a call from the Air Force to start going. Either way, the fleet may be doing more than counter-cartel operations. The third possibility on the books is the broader situation with Guyana. Remember that? Yeah, that was the major news story for a hot minute.
Yeah, because like the Venezuelan economy collapsed or something like that, right? I don't know that much about it, but I know they were an oil producing company, and then for whatever reason their economy just kind of like collapsed and their money became worth nothing, and they were like literally burning it in the street.
At the end of 2023. I think it serves as a friendly reminder why the masses tend to overestimate the frequency of conflict. It is easy to remember the cases where wars happen, but it is also easy to forget when the threats quietly disappear from the news cycle. Except this time, it might begin again. Here is the short version of the story. Guyana discovered absurd quantities of oil along its coastline. In what might have seemed like a joke only about
okay, good, alright. Yeah, he's going to explain it to me.
Decade ago, the IMF projects that Guyana's per capita GDP will exceed the United States' this year. Well, unless Venezuela claims that a section of Guyana actually belongs to Venezuela, and therefore so does this oil. The December 2023 flare-up came as Venezuela held a referendum on whether its own population agreed that the land Guyana currently controls actually belongs to Venezuela.
I fucking knew it was all about resources, man.
The timing of the U.S. deployment is hard to explain on account of this, though, because not much has happened recently to draw a response from Washington, beyond a couple of exceptions this year. On March 1st, a Venezuelan patrol ship moved within 700 meters of an ExxonMobil floating production and offloading vessel.
Don't you dare touch America's oil boats. Woohoo!
It then radioed, "You are operating in the exclusive economic zone of Venezuela."
Bitch, we don't care. Fuck out of here.
ExxonMobil was unimpressed. Then, on August 31st, a boat carrying Guyanese election officials was shot at from Venezuela as they traveled along a river between the countries. The timing of the second incident does not line up at all with the deployment, of course, because the U.S. Navy got underway well before then. So your speculation is as good as mine why this is happening now, if Guyana is the main factor behind the deployment.
It's a fight for resources, like flat out. The Venezuelan economy is collapsing, and the only way that they can save it is to acquire that vast amount of resources, making their currency worth more because it's backed by oil. However, if it belongs to another country, then they don't get those resources. So I imagine it's something similar to, oh, well, that oil over there is ours, and because you found that one right next to ours, even though it's across the border, that is also ours because it was right next to it. I imagine it's something similar to that, but ultimately it's all about resources. So ultimately, America just needs to take over all of them, and then they don't have to worry about resources like that, and America can benefit from like all of the resources from this entire hemisphere of the planet.
The final possibility is regime change in Venezuela, and the conversation surrounding this prospect tends to lose some of the nuance.
Yeah, I've heard, so we're going to cover it a little bit later, but I've heard a lot of people really, really hate Nicolas Maduro, and apparently he is, essentially was just installed by the narco-terrorists, was it like Cartel of the Suns, I think is what it's called. Yeah, apparently he was just installed as the president of Venezuela by that drug cartel, and just does their bidding and shit like that. So I'm not sure exactly. We'll cover it in a little bit, but let's see what he talks about.
Make no mistake, the United States wants him gone.
Got $50 million for information leading to the arrest and or conviction of the leader of the specially designated global terrorist cartel de los Soles. Oh, yeah, Cartel of the Suns, yeah. Okay, so that's all right. So, but the fucking U.S. State Department put a $50 million bounty.
Here is his wanted poster, with the cash reward recently doubled to $50 million.
Woo!
And, actually, going back to the comparison to Afghanistan, you can see that little distinction is being made between the world leader and the cartel business. However, these ships by themselves are not enough to launch a normal operation to remove a well-entrenched leader. The 1989 overthrow of Panama's Manuel Noriega provides a useful parallel here. A couple of autocratic leaders who ignore election results, 2 countries tied to the drug trade, and strategic interests in both locations, oil in Venezuela and a canal in Panama. The big difference is that the Panama...
You mean the American Canal? Sorry, that doesn't belong to Panama anymore. We built that, that's ours.
Invasion force was 27,000 strong. Meanwhile, the Marine detachment near Venezuela is only 3,000. So unless they are...
That's plenty. These are Marines, okay? They were bred to take lives and eat crayons, and they are all out of Crayola, alright?
Planning a very precise arrest...
Marines aren't born, they're government issued.
...and extraction. The overthrow strategy must be radically different. With all of the tomahawks, you might suspect that the plan is to bomb Venezuela into submission. Well,
that is certainly a plan, for sure.
Well, if I were Maduro, I might be careful with my upcoming travel plans. But such pure bombing campaigns have a poor track record at accomplishing this type of goal.
Not true! Listen, yes, as much as the 2 nuclear bombs that we dropped on Japan, as much as that was like a deciding factor for them to surrender to us, it was also like the 3-day campaign that the USS Missouri spent laying siege to their ports and beaches and shit from offshore. That's what got them to say, okay, you know what? We're done. We're going to go ahead and board. We're going to sign this because we can't do shit in front of you. You will turn this entire place into a parking lot if we even try. So look, peace through strength is a valid strategy.
Just look at what happened over in Yemen earlier this year, with the United States trying to blast the Houthis into submission. There was some attrition of the Houthi capacity, yes, but the movement lives on and is still causing trouble along the Red Sea. But while Venezuela warned...
Also, pirates, come on. Like, I'm down. I'm for it. Love pirates. One Piece is like my favorite anime, and Pirates of the Caribbean is an awesome franchise. But, come on. Really, pirates? We hang pirates. We should start doing that again, I think.
...warns the United States not to step foot in the country. It remains possible to overthrow Maduro without doing so. The key is having a substitute for your own boots on the ground. One thing that often gets missed in the Trump is getting adventurous in every place other than Ukraine discussion is that Maduro is unpopular in Venezuela.
Ukraine is a lot farther away from us than Venezuela is. And also, Ukraine doesn't really produce any kind of resources that would be beneficial to the United States that they can't get somewhere else closer.
And, by most international...
When I'm playing Risk, I don't care about Asia until I'm ready to care about Asia.
...accounts, lost the 2024 election by a significant margin. The problem for potential protesters in any country is that staging an uprising is risky, especially when the government has all of the military hardware. Some of that concern dissipates when a foreign power...
Yeah, people hate on the Second Amendment, but be honest. We're the only ones that can stand up against our government with weapons.
can provide the counterbalance, as the United States might be doing. There is even a leader waiting in exile, again, widely regarded as the legitimate winner of the previous election. But there is a bit of a chicken or egg problem here, where the foreign power might not want to pay for a deployment to start a revolution that never happens.
That's a carrier.
While the revolutionaries do not want to test the government without knowing that they will have backup. Well, the United States may have resolved that problem by taking the initiative. What happens next is in the hands of the Venezuelan masses. I want to close out by putting this in the broader context of the world at war. One last look at the map for posterity's sake. A ton of
global game of risk. America needs to win. What do we got? Hit me.
Ink has been spilled about how Russia is using its oil revenues to fund its invasion of Ukraine, largely thanks to the willing buyers in China and India. However, Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. The only problem is that the crude is heavy and sour. Refineries in the United States can handle it, but the United States has most Venezuelan oil under sanction. If Maduro disappears, however, and there is a clean transition to a democratically elected leader, then the sanctions go away, and suddenly a whole bunch of new oil enters the market. It might take a bit of time for all of this to happen.
So let me get this straight. If Venezuela chooses to have a free society and not a narco-terrorist state, then the prices of oil go down? Fuck yeah!
But eventually you get lower prices on the global market, which will either restrain Russia's capacity in Ukraine if the war is still ongoing, or reduce Russia's ability to reload in the event of a ceasefire. Either way, that will be a significant win for the broader Western coalition. Speaking of significant wins, you can score a couple of easy ones with these 2 books on the war.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. All of the world is a game of risk, and America needs to win. Definitely subscribe to me on YouTube, subscribe on Rumble if you're tired of YouTube, subscribe on, follow me, I suppose, on X at @real_Sestill. I make based opinions on the internet, and I'm just an overall cool guy to hang out with. Or at least as far as I'm concerned anyway. Again, I talk to myself a lot, but that's okay. Eventually, I will not be talking to myself. I was labeled a Russian bot on X recently, so I'm making progress. All right, bye.